Welcome, one and all, to Pacific 4 and 4 episode review. I'm your host, Mike, and in this episode, I'm going to be reviewing the fourth episode of the Orville's third season, also known as the Orville New Horizon Gently Falling Rain. In this episode, we see a familiar face who we met back in season one. We saw her in season two as Lieutenant Tyler, Janelle Tyler, that was. And then it was revealed that she was a Krill spy. That Krill is Talea. This time she is running to become Supreme Chancellor of Krill. She is speaking to a crowd of onlookers. She is talking about the current peace talks between Krill and the Planetary Union and how it cannot be allowed to go forth. And if she is elected, she will dissolve any and all peace talks. Next, we see that we are in New York City, and not just anywhere in New York City, but we are on Broadway as the Planetary Union delegation with Admiral Halsey, Admiral Perry, and Admiral Ozawa, along with the president of the Planetary Union, played by Bruce Broxleitner, are there to take in a performance of Annie. Annie still being shown on Broadway live in the 25th century. Next, we see the Union delegation and the Krill delegation at Union headquarters, and they're discussing the benefits of the peace treaty along with the Krill's take on Annie and how terrifying it is that the sun will come out tomorrow. Next, get a shot of the crew of the Orville, and they are on the simulator. What are they doing on the simulator, you might be asking? They're having a pub run throughout time on the simulator by going through different time periods and trying out the different beverages of that time period. We also find out that Lieutenant Kelly has been promoted to Lieutenant Commander. Ed and Kelly get a message from Admiral Halsey, and Admiral Halsey tells them that so far so good as far as the peace talks between the Krill and the Union. The Orville is tasked with taking a delegation from Earth to the Krill homeworld, where they will escort the president of the Union along with the senator to a meeting with the Supreme Chancellor to sign the treaty itself. The delegation arrives on board the Orville, where Ed Mercer and crew are greeted by the President of the Planetary Union. The President of the Planetary Union even knows of Kelly's father based on his good reputation and is looking forward to the journey to Krill to sign this new treaty. In the briefing room, Admiral Halsey updates Ed on the political aspirations of Talia and tells him how quickly she has risen to power after first starting off with a small minority of vocal Krill who were opposed and are still opposed to the treaty between the Planetary Union and the Krill. After that scene, Ed reveals to Kelly that he thought he knew. Talea tells her that the Supreme Chancellor has granted the Union limited access to the Krill's news network. He pulls up a few videos that are false as far as letting the people know who to vote for, who not to vote for, who's good, who's bad. It's propaganda. Upon arriving in Krill space, the Orville is escorted by 3 Krill cruisers to the Krill homeworld. A landing party consisting of the Union President, the Senator, Ed, Admiral Halsey, and Ensign Burke are escorted down to the Krill homeworld where they meet with the Supreme Chancellor. Before meeting the Supreme Chancellor, Charlie asks Ed who this figure is, and Ed replies, "This is their deity. This is Avis." Upon arriving to the Supreme Chancellor's chambers, they're warmly greeted. They're still talking about how they're looking forward to these peace talks continuing and the treaty being signed. While that is happening, the election for a new Supreme Chancellor is going on, and we find out that Talea at one point is losing, and then the tides turn when several districts that the chancellor thought he would win single handedly end up voting for Talea. Upon Talea immediately being confirmed as the new Supreme Chancellor, the current Chancellor is taken away, where he is then executed in front of a mob, while Admiral Halsey, the President of the Union, and Ensign Burke are placed in a holding cell. With Talea now Supreme Chancellor Krill, the Krill ships that were once escorting and guiding the Orville to Krill space lock a tractor beam onto the Orville. Kelly orders that the Orville fire upon the Krill ship that is holding them within the tractor beam. The Orville barely escapes from the Krill and heads toward Union space. Here you see the former Chancellor standing in front of the crowd along with the new Chancellor Talea before he is brutally executed in front of a mob. We next see Admiral Halsey, the President of the Union, the Senator, and Ensign Burke in the holding cell. Admiral Halsey asks Ed if Kelly might be making a run for the Union. Of course, that also remains to be seen, especially since they don't know whether or not the Orville itself has been captured. Then a couple of Krill come along and say that Ed has been asked to go see the new Chancellor. Ed has his meeting with the new Chancellor, which doesn't go well. As far as Talea is concerned, the peace talks are over. She's the new ruler of Krill, and the party that came down to negotiate the peace treaty and sign the peace treaty will be executed. We then have a scene on board the Orville where Kelly has finally been able to make contact with Talea, where Talea says that the delegation will be executed, and she also has some cheap shots at Kelly as far as Kelly and Ed's past relationship is concerned. Kelly doesn't take it lightly. Kelly says that she's leaving. Then there's a scene with Admiral Perry, and Admiral Perry is telling Kelly and Bordas that they're sending a fleet to rendezvous with the Orville so that they can attempt a rescue mission. That fleet will be 2 hours away at maximum quantum speed. It's at that point that you realize that the Union is now at war with the Krill. We see Ed and two Krill guards walking through the streets of Krill. We see various vendors selling their different products, whether it's food, whether it's drink, whether it's jewelry. They're selling it. We see a few women dancing around poles. Ed's trying to find out where he's being taken when all of a sudden one of the vendors comes over and offers some food to the two guards. They tell him to go away. They even push him away. Then two more Krills show up alongside the vendor that was trying to offer some food, and they shoot the two guards and they take Ed. Ed is taken to a safe house where inside the safe house they are guarding a child. This child is the daughter of Talea. This child is very precious, and if it were to be discovered that Talea had a child, then it could ruin her political career. Why? Because this child is half human. These two Krill try to convince Ed to persuade Talea to admit that Anaya is alive and she is her daughter, and that between Ed, Talea, and Anaya, they can unite their two peoples together so they can fend off the galaxy against the Kalon. When Ed leaves, he finds out from those two Krill that Talea was actually going to spare Ed's life. Ed seeks an audience with Talea. He has a conversation about Anaya with her and says, "Why did you have her? Why did you go through with the birth if you knew that it was going to bring shame as far as your point of view is concerned to not only yourself but the Krill people?" We find out how much Talea not only still cares about Ed, but she also cares about Anaya, and she isn't going to let anything happen to her daughter that she cares so much about. Before Ed, Admiral Halsey, the president, senator, and Edson Burke are executed, Ed is shown a facility where two parents who aborted their child are shown what the possible life of that child might have been through holograms. Ed has a speech where he says, "What you're doing here is wrong." Talia comes back and says, "It's no different than what your people have done. We punish these people for aborting their child while you still continue it." This was a very major scene in this episode. It's something that I know is very, very touchy when it comes to, Roe versus Wade, the right for abortion. I'm not going to get into it here in this video. This was the part of the episode that really starts making you think. That is something that Star Trek used to do very well. Star Trek used to use what was going on in present day and put it in a story and use it as an allegory for what's going on, which I think, in my opinion, is what Seth was trying to do here for the Orville. Now, granted, this episode was written by Brandon Braga and Andre Boramis. The Union delegation is brought out to be executed. While that is going on, Kelly rendezvous with Admiral Ozawa and the Union fleet. They alter course and head toward Krill. Once they arrive at Krill, one of Talia's assistants informs her what's going on. She orders that the Krill fleet engage the Union fleet, and there's a battle that ensues in space. We see Krill fighters, Krill destroyers, along with the Union fleet. We also see some Tarragons in action. During this episode, Kelly mentions Directive 21, and Lamar says it's going to take some time to get this directive implemented. They also mention it another time when it's Admiral Perry, Kelly, and Bordas talking in the briefing room. Kelly tells Admiral Perry that they're still working on getting Directive 21 implemented. Well, we find out what Directive 21 is. It's when two Union officers disguise themselves as the enemy and get the delegation out there. When Claire and Lamar show up, throw some flash grenades, they escort the delegation to a Krill vehicle. Of course, we don't find out that it's Lamar and Claire until they get into the vehicle and there's a high-speed chase. What are they looking for? They're looking for their shuttle. So it's a fast race to the shuttle. They're being fired upon. They lose control of their navigational system when the navigational system goes out. So they make an accurate guess. They manage to find their shuttle. They get on board the shuttle. They lift off very quickly. You see a very cool space battle going on, something to the likes of Deep Space Nine during the Klingon War and also the Dominion War. So, and that was something really nice to be hold, especially on screen when you haven't seen a space battle like that in quite some time. The delegation on board the shuttle get to the Orville after taking fire themselves and actually having a Krill fighter crash into them with their shields up. Kelly orders for the shuttle bay doors to be open. The Orville positions itself so the shuttle can crash land into the shuttle bay a la Star Trek V. Once the delegation is on board, Admiral Ozawa orders the fleet back to Union space. There's a scene at Union headquarters afterwards where they are talking about what occurred and what Ed had seen, and also Anaya, and how the president has given Ed a choice as to whether or not he wants to use Anaya as a way to bring the Krill and the Union together to fend off the Kalon attack. This is one of the scenes that we see at Union headquarters after the president leaves and the Admiralty leaves, where Kelly and Ed are having a conversation. Anaya, of course, is revealed to Kelly. Kelly says she wishes that she and Ed had a child together. This is also where Ed tells Kelly that he only met Anaya once, but he already misses her. He doesn't know anything about her, but he already misses her. I really did enjoy this episode. I thought it was better than last week's episode, Morality Paradox, although one of my issues with it was that it was heavy-handed when it came to the political messaging, as far as two political parties battling against each other. You also had a view on abortion. One side is against abortion, the other side is for abortion. I had to take myself out of it a little bit and realize that they're using this story as an allegory for what's going on currently, one of the issues in the country and how divided people are. Do I think that politics need to be thrown into a story? No, I don't. But I also try to understand what they're trying to say. Star Trek would always use what's going on and make an allegory out of that story of what's going on in present day when it came to politics and civil rights, and try to have a neutral perspective on it. Did this episode have a neutral perspective on it? Well, that's up for you to decide. That's even still up for me to decide. Even though I've watched this episode twice, I'm still trying to go through this episode and really think about it. And maybe that's what they're just trying to do. They're trying to get us to think about current issues, just like Star Trek used to. Trying to get us to talk about it, have civil discourse about current issues, not to where we get nasty and start doing name calling, saying you're wrong, you know, they're wrong, everyone's wrong, or they're right, you're wrong, this, that, and the other. They're trying to get us to talk about current issues in a civilized manner. Does the political message hurt my score? In the first viewing, during the live reaction, I will admit I gave the episode a 4.5 out of 5. And then I went over to the Nerporial Lifeforms channel. Then we talked about the episode a little more. And I gave the episode a 9.5 out of 10. That still remains a 9.5 out of 10. And the only reason why it's not a perfect 10 was because I'm honestly having a hard time, deciding where I stand on this, as far as the political messaging is concerned in this episode. Honestly, that's probably what's going to occur for years to come. This episode is going to be one that many people think about, many people talk about. It's going to be a water cooler discussion for many years to come because everybody has their own answer to everything that's going on in the world. And it's up to us to decide what we think is right, what we think is wrong. Are we all going to agree? No. No, that's why I'm saying everybody has their own answers when it comes to certain subject matters. However, I think if Hollywood, television, movies are going to tackle a subject, they should do it in a way just like Star Trek used to, but do it in a way where by the end of the movie, by the end of the episode, it's up to each and every one of us to decide what is right and what is wrong. And that's what I think is going to happen here. As I've mentioned before, we're all going to have to make our own decisions as to what we think is right and what we think is wrong as far as this episode is concerned. But this episode is still a 9.5 out of 5, or in my normal scale, a 4.5 out of 5. I really did like it. I watched it again and I, tried to, watch it as a fan instead of letting my own personal beliefs step in there. I try to watch it as a fan and try to look at both sides of the argument that were being presented. And again, I'm going to say it one more time, just like Star Trek used to do, presenting both sides of the argument and letting us all decide, because we're probably all still going to be deciding for the days to come, weeks to come, months to come, and years to come. This concludes my review for episode 4 of the Orville New Horizons Gently Falling Rain. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, give it a thumbs down. Leave a comment down in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe. And as always, I'm not just a baseball guy, I'm an all around guy. Take care, everyone.